In the heart of the Carpathian Mountains, nestled between misty peaks and dense forests, lay the village of Varkalak. It was a place steeped in old legends and eerie silence, where the locals lived in quiet fear of the supernatural. Legend spoke of a vampire named Vladislava, who once was the beautiful daughter of a wealthy nobleman. Betrayed by a lover who had promised her eternal devotion only to vanish on the eve of their wedding, Vladislava's grief twisted into a hunger for vengeance. She died under a blood-red moon, her body buried in a crypt beneath the village chapel. Over the years, strange occurrences plagued Varkalak. Livestock would go missing, and the villagers spoke in hushed tones of the cold, piercing gaze that would sometimes settle upon them from the darkness. But the most unnerving sign was the presence of a peculiar shadow in the chapel's crypt, an elongated, almost otherworldly shape that seemed to move even when no one was looking. One stormy night, a stranger arrived in the village, a historian named Adrian who had come to research the old tales of Varkalak. As he delved into the village's archives, he found fragmented records and cryptic warnings about Vladislava. The documents hinted that the vampire's curse could only be broken if someone was brave or foolish enough to uncover the truth behind her betrayal. Determined to unravel the mystery, Adrian ventured to the chapel during the dead of night. As the wind howled and lightning illuminated the crypt, he saw the shadow taking shape, Vladislava herself, her eyes glowing with a mournful light. Her form flickered in and out of view, like an old film reel struggling to catch focus. Adrian felt an icy chill as the air grew dense with an oppressive darkness. The crypt's walls seemed to close in, and he noticed a strange, ancient symbol carved into the stone beneath the vampire's shadow. As he tried to decipher its meaning, the air was filled with a whispering voice, almost like a lament. The deeper Adrian delved, the more he felt he was being watched by unseen eyes. He sensed a presence growing stronger, a silent force that seemed to intertwine with his own fears. As he touched the symbol, a sudden surge of coldness swept over him, and the whispering turned into a mournful wail. Suddenly, the shadow began to take a more defined form, and Adrian realized he was no longer alone. The vampire's sorrowful face appeared before him, her eyes full of a tragic, unfulfilled longing. But before he could react, the chapel's heavy door creaked open, and the storm's thunder echoed through the night. The figure of Vladislava seemed to waver, as if caught between the realms of the living and the dead. Her final words were a chilling plea, an unresolved cry for vengeance and redemption. Adrian stumbled back, his heart pounding, as the shadow retreated into the darkness, leaving him with a lingering sense of dread. The next morning, Adrian was gone. The villagers found the crypt open, but no trace of him remained. They could only wonder if the vampire's curse had claimed another victim or if Adrian had stumbled upon something that should have stayed hidden. The village of Varkalak returned to its quiet routine, but the whispers of Vladislava's ghost continued to haunt the shadows, and the symbol in the crypt remained a mystery, promising that the true story of the betrayed vampire was far from over. As the weeks passed, the disappearance of Adrian became a hushed topic in Varkalak. The villagers, already wary of the dark, tried to avoid the chapel, and whispers of Adrian's fate mingled with the old legends. But one evening, a young woman named Eliza arrived in the village. She was a descendant of a family once prominent in Varkalak but had left long ago. Having heard stories of her ancestors' connection to the village's dark history, Eliza was driven by a sense of duty to uncover the truth about the mysterious disappearances that had plagued her lineage. Eliza's arrival stirred curiosity and unease among the villagers. She began her investigation with a determined but cautious demeanor, speaking with the elderly and examining old records. Her search led her to the chapel, where the memory of Adrian's final night loomed heavily in the air. One night, Eliza ventured into the crypt. The oppressive darkness was even more palpable than Adrian had described. She approached the ancient symbol, its surface still faintly glowing as if imbued with a supernatural essence. Determined to understand its meaning, Eliza traced the symbol with her fingers and discovered that it was actually a combination of ancient runes and protective sigils. As she examined the symbol, Eliza noticed a hidden compartment within the crypt's wall. Inside, she found an old journal, its leather cover worn and cracked. The journal belonged to Adrian. Its pages were filled with frantic notes and sketches of the vampire's form, but one entry stood out. Asterisk, the curse is bound to the symbol, but its true nature is hidden beneath the surface. Vladislava's betrayal was more than a broken promise, it was an act of dark magic. The key to breaking the curse lies in understanding the runes and confronting the betrayal that started it all. Asterisk, Eliza's heart raced as she read Adrian's notes. They detailed strange phenomena he had observed and hinted at a hidden truth about Vladislava's betrayal, a betrayal tied to dark rituals and ancient pacts. Determined to continue Adrian's work, Eliza sought out the village's oldest resident, a woman named Agatha, who was rumored to possess knowledge of the old ways. Agatha, frail but sharp, reluctantly agreed to help Eliza. She revealed that Vladislava's lover had been a sorcerer who had used her for a dark ritual, binding her soul to the realm of the undead in a twisted act of power and revenge. The betrayal was not merely personal but part of a larger, sinister scheme. As Agatha spoke, she mentioned a hidden ritual site deep in the forest, where the sorcerer had performed his dark rites. According to her, the site held a crucial clue to breaking Vladislava's curse but was guarded by malevolent spirits and ancient enchantments. With Agatha's guidance, Eliza ventured into the forest. Following an ancient path marked with runes similar to those found in the crypt, the forest grew darker and more foreboding, with strange noises and flickering shadows unsettling her. At the heart of the forest, she found a hidden clearing where the ground was marked with ritualistic symbols. As Eliza began to decipher the runes, she felt a presence watching her, cold and menacing. The air was thick with anticipation, and the ground beneath her feet seemed to pulse with a life of its own. She realized that the ritual site was not just a location, but a living entity tied to Vladislava's curse. The atmosphere grew heavier as she worked, and the symbols began to glow faintly. Eliza knew she was on the brink of uncovering something crucial, but the darkness around her seemed to close in, and she could hear whispers growing louder, mournful and angry. The forest itself seemed to come alive with a dark, restless energy. Eliza's heart pounded as she approached the center of the site. She felt an inexplicable pull, as if the very ground was urging her to complete the ritual. She knew that understanding Vladislava's curse was only the beginning and that breaking it would require more than just knowledge. It would demand courage and perhaps a sacrifice. As she prepared to complete the ritual, the shadows deepened, and the whispers became a chilling wail. Eliza braced herself, knowing that she was about to confront forces far beyond her imagination. The forest seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the resolution of a centuries-old curse. The mystery of Vladislava's betrayal and the dark magic that bound her was far from over, and Eliza was on the brink of discovering a truth that could either set the vampire's soul free or plunge the village into deeper darkness. As Eliza prepared to complete the ritual, the clearing seemed to vibrate with an otherworldly energy. The ancient symbols glowed brighter, casting eerie shadows that danced on the trees. The whispers around her grew more insistent, a cacophony of voices pleading, accusing, and lamenting. The symbols on the ground were arranged in a circle, and in the center lay an ancient, weathered book. Its pages were filled with arcane text and illustrations of dark rites. Eliza carefully opened the book, her fingers trembling, as she traced the words with her eyes. The text detailed the final steps of the ritual, but the language was complex and its meaning elusive. She noticed an illustration of a dagger, its blade inscribed with the same runes she had seen in the crypt. The book indicated that the dagger, when used in the right manner, could sever the bond between Vladislava's soul and the realm of the undead. But the location of this dagger was not clear. It seemed to be hidden within the forest, possibly in a place that was both sacred and dangerous. As Eliza studied the book, she heard a rustling sound behind her. She turned to find a shadowy figure emerging from the trees. It was a man, dressed in dark robes, his face obscured by a hood. The figure spoke in a low, gravelly voice. "You seek the truth, but are you prepared for the cost?" Eliza's heart raced. "Who are you?" The figure's eyes glowed faintly through the hood. "I am a guardian of the ancient magic. The curse that binds Vladislava is not easily broken, You must understand that the dagger is hidden in a place where only the worthy can find it. Many have tried and failed. Eliza steeled herself. Tell me where I can find it. The guardian's voice grew softer, almost mournful. The dagger lies beneath the ancient altar, hidden by a spell only the true seeker can unravel. But beware, the magic that guards it is powerful and treacherous. It tests those who seek to disrupt the balance. With that, the guardian vanished into the darkness, leaving Eliza alone with her thoughts and the weight of the task ahead. She knew that finding the dagger would be the key to completing the ritual and confronting the curse, but the path was fraught with danger. Determined, Eliza followed the clues from the book and ventured deeper into the forest. The air grew colder, and the forest seemed to close in around her, the trees bending as if trying to obscure her path. Finally, she arrived at an ancient stone altar, covered in thick vines and moss. The altar was engraved with runes that matched those in the book. Eliza began to decipher the runes, which spoke of trials and sacrifices. As she worked, she felt a presence, watching her every move. The whispers from earlier seemed to echo louder, and the shadows around her took on a menacing form. The altar's surface began to tremble, and the runes glowed with a fierce, red light. A sudden gust of wind extinguished her lantern, plunging her into darkness. Eliza's breath came in shallow gasps as she fumbled in the dark. The whispers grew louder, almost deafening. She could sense figures moving around her, though she couldn't see them. Just as the whispers reached a fever pitch, a hidden compartment within the altar opened, revealing an ornate dagger. The blade was inscribed with runes similar to those she had seen before. Eliza grasped the dagger, feeling its cold weight in her hand. As she held it, the whispers ceased abruptly, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted slightly. Eliza knew that with the dagger in hand, she had the means to confront Vladislava's curse. But she also understood that this was only the beginning of her ordeal. With renewed determination, Eliza made her way back to the crypt. The shadows seemed to follow her, and the air grew thick with anticipation. As she approached the chapel, she noticed a figure standing near the entrance, the vampire herself, Vladislava, her form more solid and menacing than before. Vladislava's eyes met Eliza's with a piercing gaze. "You have the dagger," she said in a voice that echoed with centuries of sorrow. "But breaking the curse requires more than a blade. You must confront the true source of the betrayal and face the sorcerer's spirit that still lingers." Eliza's heart pounded. She knew the final confrontation was near, but the exact nature of the sorcerer's spirit and the full extent of the betrayal remained shrouded in mystery. She had the dagger, but the resolution of Vladislava's curse and her own safety depended on unraveling the deeper secrets of the sorcerer's dark magic. As Eliza prepared for the final confrontation, she felt the weight of her choices and the looming presence of ancient, unresolved anger. The true nature of Vladislava's curse and the final test awaited, promising that the resolution of this dark tale was still far from certain. Eliza stood before Vladislava, the ancient dagger clenched tightly in her hand. The vampire's sorrowful gaze was now tinged with a fierce, almost desperate intensity. The chapel's shadows seemed to pulse with a life of their own, as if aware of the impending climax. "You've come far," Vladislava said, her voice echoing with a haunting resonance. "But the true resolution lies beyond the blade. You must confront the sorcerer's spirit and undo the pact that binds me." Eliza hesitated, feeling the weight of the moment press upon her. She could sense a malevolent force lingering in the chapel, a presence that seemed to coil around her, whispering dark promises and threats. With a deep breath, Eliza stepped into the chapel's crypt. The air was frigid, and the once faint whispers now roared like a storm. The symbols on the walls glowed with an ominous light, casting eerie shadows that danced around her. At the center of the crypt, where Adrian had last been seen, stood an ethereal figure cloaked in shadow, the sorcerer's spirit. His eyes glowed with a sinister light, and his presence radiated a palpable darkness. He seemed both part of the shadows and beyond them, a tortured echo of something both alive and dead. "You dare to challenge me?" the sorcerer's voice echoed, his tone dripping with contempt and menace. Eliza lifted the dagger, its blade shimmering with a cold, otherworldly light. "I'm here to break the curse and put an end to this." The sorcerer's laughter was a chilling sound that seemed to come from all around her. "You cannot undo what is bound by ancient magic. My power transcends the grave, and Vladislav's fate is forever intertwined with my own." As the sorcerer spoke, the shadows around him began to writhe and twist, taking on the forms of anguished souls and dark figures. The whispers grew louder, mingling with the sorcerer's laughter, creating a cacophony of dread. Eliza approached the sorcerer, trying to focus on the runes she had deciphered. She raised the dagger, aiming for the heart of the dark presence, but just as she was about to strike, the crypt's walls began to close in, the runes shifting and changing, forming new, unfamiliar patterns. The sorcerer's form flickered and shifted, becoming both more terrifying and more elusive. Eliza felt an intense cold grip her heart as the shadows seemed to seep into her own being. She tried to fight against the encroaching darkness, but it was as if the very essence of the sorcerer's power was pulling her into a void of despair. In a final, desperate move, Eliza plunged the dagger into the center of the crypt's dark symbols. There was a deafening roar as the crypt was engulfed in a blinding light. The sorcerer's anguished scream echoed through the chamber, mingling with the sounds of rending fabric and shattering glass. When the light faded, Eliza found herself alone in the crypt, the air heavy with silence. The sorcerer's presence was gone, but the shadows still seemed to writhe and whisper around her. Vladislav's form had vanished, and the symbols on the walls were now dark and inert. Exhausted and shaken, Eliza staggered out of the chapel, only to find the village of Varkalak eerily quiet. The villagers were nowhere to be seen, and the once familiar houses were empty and silent. The darkness seemed to have swallowed the village whole. As Eliza walked through the deserted streets, she felt an unsettling chill. The whispers from the crypt had followed her, growing louder and more insistent. They spoke of a cycle not yet complete, of a curse that had merely shifted its form. The final entry in Adrian's journal, which she had carried with her, began to glow faintly. The words seemed to rearrange themselves, revealing a new, chilling message. Asterisk, the curse is not broken, only transformed. Beware, for the shadows are now a part of you, and the darkness will always find a way. Asterisk, Eliza realized with a creeping horror that the village's fate and her own were now intertwined with the dark forces she had sought to confront. The curse of Vladislav and the sorcerer had left its mark on her, and the shadows that once haunted the crypt were now a part of her soul. The village of Varkalak remained in silence, a ghostly reminder of the darkness that had been unleashed. And as Eliza looked over the desolate landscape, she understood that the true horror was not the end of the tale, but the beginning of an unending cycle of darkness and despair.